Verse 621. The discriminated by discrimination exists not, and discrimination itself does not obtain. Discrimination being thus unobtainable, there is neither transmigration nor nirvana. There might be a problem with this word discrimination. I'm sure this is a perfectly accurate translation, but the word discrimination might have us scratching our heads a little bit. And the full force of what is being expressed here perhaps isn't conveyed by the word discrimination. So I'm going to temporarily replace it with the word cognition. And let's see if we can begin to get the full impact of this verse. Because the impact should take us right to the heart of enlightenment practice. In other words, to enlightenment itself. So let's try replacing discrimination by the word cognition to see if we can get the full impact of this verse. So the cognized by cognition exists not. Our every moment is caught up with cognition. Apparently we're cognizing this world round about us. We're seeing it, we're experiencing it, we're cognizing it through the senses and the mind. Now the trouble with this word cognition, and why we can only replace the word discrimination temporarily by it, is that it assumes the existence of this external world. Cognition, the whole study and understanding of cognition, assumes that there is an external world being cognized by our mind and the senses. And what this first phrase is telling us is no, there is not an external world to be cognized. In other words, cognition is based on a prejudice, a philosophical prejudice, the prejudice that the world actually exists. And that's where the word discrimination comes in, because the word discrimination in English tends to relate to prejudice, racial discrimination, sexual discrimination. So the word discrimination is actually quite good because it has this element of prejudice associated with it. In cognition, the word cognition seems almost scientific by comparison, but it's laden with prejudice. So that's just the first phrase. What is cognized by cognition doesn't exist. There's no external world to be cognized. And discrimination itself does not obtain, and cognition itself does not obtain. In other words, there's no such thing. If there's no external world to be cognized, how can there be cognition? Now, if you're an enlightenment practitioner, this should knock you right back into your practice. Cognition being thus unobtainable, there's neither transmigration nor nirvana. So once we sidestep this prejudice inherent in the word cognition, we're told there's neither transmigration nor nirvana. Now, if you're an enlightenment practitioner and you appreciate the full import of this verse, it should take you straight to Nirvana. But Nirvana is something which is spoken of in contrast to samsara, to the world of ignorance and suffering, expressed here as transmigration, which is interesting. I've spoken about this before, what's a relevant understanding of the word transmigration. Transmigration is conventionally understood to be rebirth or reincarnation, or some variety of it. But transmigration is actually the transmigration of the attention. And the transmigration of the attention, the moving of the attention from here to there, only happens because we're caught up in the prejudice of cognition. And once we drop that, there's simply suchness. So this sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, doesn't talk about nirvana, it talks about suchness. It directs us to suchness. And the full implication of this distinction is going to be brought out in the next run of verses. And it's a very wonderful distinction, actually. Because we want to get rid of the notion that we're somehow clawing ourselves back to a state of realization, away from the world of delusion. What we ultimately are aiming for is to embrace everything. Embrace everything. We're not painting ourselves into a little corner, a little enlightened corner, by rejecting everything that is apparently going on, by rejecting the world of cognition. We don't reject it because it no longer obtains, as it says in the verse. We drop all ideas, even ideas of spiritual salvation, spiritual realization, and abide in all-embracing suchness.